Mubin this side?
Yes, ma'am, you are audible.
Okay.
Vinita ma'am, can I? Hello, Vinita ma'am. Hello, Vinita ma'am. Hello. Hello, Vinita ma'am. Hello, Vinita ma'am.
रविंदर मैं कॉल कर लेती हूँ मैम को एक मिनट.
Okay. Actually, Facebook Live is connected. So whenever she is ready, we may start.
Okay, I'm just calling her.
Sure.
Ravinder, can we start now?
Yes, ma'am, you may start. It is connected. It is live.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I welcome you all to the webinar on engendering migration during COVID crisis, Reflections, organized by the IQAC and Women Development Cell of the Atmaram Sanatan Dharma College. IQAC, I welcome Dr. Amba Pandey from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. We are really honored to have you with us. Our college has successfully conducted several webinars during this period. Under the able guidance of our principal, Dr. Gyantosh Kumar Jha. Now, I would like to invite the principal of the college to welcome us and say a few words.
थैंक यू विनीता. नमस्कार मित्रों, मैं आत्माराम सनातन धर्म कॉलेज की ओर से आज की हमारी वक्ता डॉक्टर अम्बा पांडे और सभी प्रतिभागियों का इस वेबिनार में स्वागत करता हूं, हार्दिक अभिनंदन करता हूं. आज इस विषय पर डॉक्टर अम्बा पांडे अपना व्याख्यान और प्रेजेंटेशन देने जा रही हैं. वो कोरोना काल में या कोरोना संकट के समय अप्रवासी महिलाओं की जो स्थिति है या उनकी जो समस्याएं हैं उस पर बात करेंगे. मुझे लगता है कि पूरे यदि सभ्यता में देखें तो ये समस्याएं बहुत सारी हैं. अप्रवासी महिलाएं और मजदूरों की तो हैं ही, साथ में स्त्रियों की एक अलग तरह की समस्या इस दरमियान अखबारों या न्यूज के माध्यम से देखी और सुनी जा सकती है. तो यदि बातचीत के क्रम में यदि इन चीज़ों को भी लेने का प्रयास करेंगी तो मुझे लगता है कि बहुत अच्छा रहेगा. बहुत सारी बातचीत और इस दरमियान हम लोगों ने वेबिनार्स में करने की कोशिश की है, जिसमें विभिन्न तरह के विषयों को हमने लिया है. और आज हम लोग एक मूल रूप से जो अप्रवासी महिलाएं हैं उनकी क्या समस्याएं हैं और कोविड-19 के आने के कारण उनका जीवन, उनका रहन सहन और कैसे बदला है, किस तरह के संकटों से वे सब गुजर रही हैं, इन चीज़ों पर आज की बात होगी. मैं पुनः आप सबका और हमारी स्पीकर डॉक्टर पांडे का स्वागत करता हूं. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. थैंक यू.
Thank you, sir. Now I invite Dr. Syed Mubin Zehra, Program Coordinator and the member of the WDC of our college, to carry forward the program.
Thank you, Dr. Vinita. Thank you, sir. I'd like to introduce our honorable speaker, Dr. Amba Pandey. We are really honored to have you here. Dr. Amba Pandey is associated with Center for Indo-Pacific Studies, School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has a PhD from School of International Studies, JNU, MPhil also from School of International Studies, JNU. Her area of research is quite varied and it's quite expansive. Her area of research includes Indian diaspora, international migration, transnationalism, Indo-Pacific, South Pacific, Fiji region, nuclear free zone. She has a PhD specifically on nuclear free zone, Asian security environment. Dr. Amba Pandey's books, she's a prolific writer. Her books include Regional Scene, Southeast Asia and the South, Prospects of Nuclear-Free Zone, Women in Diaspora, Historic Native Literary Changes, Singapore. This is one of my favorite, Dr. Amba.
Thank you.
In-depth experiences of the women in Indian diaspora for Springers. Her forthcoming book, which we are looking forward to, it's based on legacy of slavery, an interesting field. Her articles have been published and are being published in national, international journals. It ranges from topics that include homeland conflicts, migration of students from India and China, skilled immigration, role of Indian diaspora in the development of Indian IT industry. That is very interesting. India and its diaspora in Fiji, Indian diaspora as India as a soft power. Dr. Amba is also a visiting fellow at Department of Business Economics, University of South Pacific, Suva, Fiji. She's a visiting fellow at Department of Anthropology and Archaeology, Dunedin, New Zealand. She's also a visiting fellow at International Institute of Asian Studies, University of Amsterdam, Netherlands. Dr. Pandey has organized several national, international conferences. She is also engaged with many minor and major projects under UGC, ICSSR, which includes specific countries and specifically to her subject, countries like Myanmar, Singapore, Fiji, Australia, Bangladesh. Dr. Pandey is a prolific writer. Also, she is on editorial board of several journals and has been the review editor of journals such as International Studies, Diaspora Studies, Migration and Development, Routledge. She's also the co-founder editor of Migration and Diaspora, an interdisciplinary journal, New Delhi. She's also an associate editor of International Studies, journal Sage. Today, Dr. Pandey would be speaking on engendering migration during COVID crisis reflections, which is gendered and perspective of migration during COVID crisis. Mahila Pravasi ki sthiti COVID crisis mein. I can go on and on with the kind of publication and the work that Dr. Pandey has been doing. We are very honored to have you here. Before we request Dr. Pandey to start with her interesting and intellectual lecture, I would request all my participants that please hold on to your questions. Make a note of it. After Dr. Pandey is done with the lecture, we will take your question answer session. Thank you all for being here and making this interesting. I request Dr. Pandey to please begin with your lecture. Dr. Pandey, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mubinji. Thank you very much for your good words. Thank you for having me here. I'm really honored to be in this gathering, and also Dr. Jha for actually introducing the subject, and which is very relevant in present context. So what I'll try to do is to talk something about women and migrant laborers first, women as migrant laborers first, and the direction in which the whole discourse is moving in the present. And then I will come to the COVID crisis, which is actually a developing crisis. We know this, and as you know, yesterday, I was I was writing the policy suggestions in the end, and I was thinking that why don't the government sending food and buses to pick these migrant laborers from the roads. And I saw that there was a proposal from the government that each and every migrant laborer should be picked up from the roads. So what I'm trying to say is that we are seeing this crisis, and also the solutions that are developing in this context. So we will talk about all this, but first let me begin with this whole topic of gender and migration, gendered migration, that's how we see it in these days. And I'm also very happy that you have a Women's Studies Center, and let me make it very clear that I am not a gender studies person. But since I was working on diaspora, I saw that a lot of issues remained silent. silent in the diaspora studies related to women. So I decided that I will pick up this and bring the scholars together. And the two books which you are seeing on the screen, this is a 2020 publication on indentured and post-indentured women. The next is, this is a 2018, okay. Yeah, this is a 2018 publication. This is a series that I am taking, trying to release with Springer on women in Indian diaspora. So I would want a lot of scholars to be associated with this series, so that we can really bring out a varied aspect of women in Indian diaspora. So without further delay, I would like to start. This is about engendering migration during COVID crisis. So basically what I'm going to do is to introduce the subject, and then I want to talk about a very relevant concept these days, which is called feminization of migration. And then I will come to the vulnerabilities of women during the migration. And then also, along with the vulnerabilities, women are also very significant these days for the development. They are playing a very important role in the development through migration. And then the government policies related to women, migrant women, and then the COVID crisis, and then some policy suggestions. So that's what I that's the framework that I'm going to follow. So, people and communities have engaged in migrations from time immemorial. Over the past 4 decades, total number of international migrants have more than doubled. As per United Nations Population Division, international migrants have increased from 105 million in 1985 to 258 million in 2017. So you can see there is a drastic jump. Women have always been part and parcel of this process of migration and settlement, and constitute nearly half of the present migration population. Estimates by gender confirm that in 1960, female migrants accounted for nearly 47%, which has now increased to 49%. And the latest data suggests that it is now 50 point something percentage of the total world migrants. Women are now forming such an important part of this. Overall, the increase in the number of women migrants is almost 8% higher than the men. As far as the internal migrants are concerned, according to UN Human Development Report, it is almost 4 times more than the international migration. And women constitute almost 70 to 80% of the internal migrants. So how it is possible? It is possible because they include marriage migrations. That's how the numbers are so high in case of women migrants. But women migrants as a laborer is what we are going to talk now. And, and that's something which is not well documented. Let me say, especially in case of internal migrant, it is just not properly documented. Actually, that's a major challenge that we face today while talking about women migrants. People migrate due to various reasons. And one of the major reasons is the economic benefit. They look for economic opportunities. They also migrate because of demographic trends. They also migrate because of involuntary reasons like disasters, wars, political persecution, and pandemics, of course. And these kind of migrations are generally called distress migration. So what we are facing today is the distress reverse migration. That is what we are faced with today. Women too migrate due to various reasons, due to similar reasons, but their experiences are different and very specific to them. Studies point out that gender and gender relations impact migration at every stage. That is, the reason for migration, the process of integration, the continuing links with the home land, the transfer of and utilization of remittances, savings, investments, everything. Women are playing a role in every stage of migration. However, the traditional theoretical and empirical interpretations on migration remain largely gender blind. omitting and downplaying women's experiences and voices, perhaps with the assumption that since they are migrating as dependents, their experiences would be same as the men. Till 1960 to early 1970s, the term migrants largely stood for male migrants and the family. So throughout the colonial period, apart from the indenture system where the women were recorded by name, all the other migration trends always talked about Mr. So-and-so plus. That's the way women were represented in the colonial documents, and much later. It was always Mr. So-and-so plus, Mr. Patel plus. So that was the lady, the woman. That's how she was represented in the migration trend. In other words, women were considered as passive agents in the process of migration, and hence their experiences and voices were subsumed under the homogenized perceptions. However, in the recent times, migration process itself is being referred as feminization of migration. So what has happened? Because of which this term, the whole term feminization of migration, has gained currency throughout the world. There are some specific developments in this regard. The first is that the proportion of women in the migration process has drastically increased. It is almost more than half now. In context of internal migrants also, although it is very difficult to document because people move freely, apart from China where they are restricted to move, throughout the world, internally people move freely. In case of India, the number of internal labor migrants are somehow somewhere around 139 million. And of this, they say that almost 60% is women, but that includes marriage migrations also. That's actually, it's very important to make it clear that what kind of migration this ladies are going. However, number is not the only factor. During the past few decades, there has been number of legislations related to migration, gender selective demands of labor, and changing gender relations. All these are, the governments themselves have introduced laws about gender equality and things like that. That has actually increased the narrative. It has started a narrative about women. There has also been changes in the nature of migration, like more and more women have started migrating independently now for work and have become main bread earners of the family. This is a very significant change that has come in the international migration or internal migration. They themselves are the primary migrants now, instead of just following their fathers or husbands. As per the IOM, half of the total number of women migrants are now migrating independently. So whatever is the total number of migrants in the world, around 50% of the total number are women. And among this, 50% are now migrating independently. Only 50% are migrating as dependents. So that's a major, huge development, because they are the breadwinners now. There is also a rise of women-centric occupation like caregivers, nurses, which is much in demand and which has led to the rise of women migrants. There have also been changes in the patterns of migration because now women are migrating from Asia more. So the Asian women are now migrating, and we know that, throughout South Asia, women are migrating as nurses, as doctors, in every form, from maids to highly skilled IT professionals, women are migrating. All these changes brought about women from the margins to the center of this discourse of development and might. Actually, the United Nations effort of declaring decade for women and all these factors have also led to a significant. Another important development is the upsurge in the feminist scholarship on migration studies. So migration theories were reinvented when feminist scholars started talking about migrant women. The first phase was from 1960s and 70s when women were added in the documentation. So no more she was the plus. She was registered with her name. So Mr. So-and-so, wife so-and-so. So the documentation began during 1960s, 70s. Later on, during 1980s, there is this feminist standpoint theory comes, you know, where the gender actually became the center of analysis. They wanted to say that, you know, she is the one. And but this was actually this theory was much criticized also, because, you know, they were giving too much of importance to gender as compared to other aspects. So during 1990s, further development in migration studies took place, and when they started recognizing that nationality, class, race, and ethnicity, everything matters. So gender intersects these other aspects of society, and that's how, while interpreting gender, these aspects has to be taken into account. This was a major change during 1990s, which still continues. And you know, like while talking about women migrants, we know that how the Western perceptions have actually were imposed on our analysis. You know, that's how Asian women were projected in a particular light. You know, about meek and submissive, things like that. When Asians started to talk about from their standpoint theory, from their point of view, then the studies took a new form. That's what now we are witnessing. You know, even in case of indentured migrants, now the indentured migrants themselves are interpreting their own stories, you know, and that's how new things came up. So feminist inquiries show that sometimes migration can provide new, okay, I think I have left one. Yeah, but one thing is there that while talking about women, please be very careful that not actually essentializing them into a group. You know, let us be open towards other factors that impact women as they impact other gender. Therefore, feminization of migration cannot be credited only to the increase in the number of women migrants, but a combination of resultant factors that has led to the growth of gendered perspective in the migration studies. But actually what what studies say is that you know, there are some vulnerabilities also that has increased with the number of women migrants, but at the same time, women, as we know, have also become more independent. So it plays on both the levels. You know, at one side we see that the vulnerabilities have increased, on the other side we see that the women have become more assertive about their needs, about their voices and things like that. So what are the vulnerabilities? You know, generally women are more vulnerable, and because of obvious reasons, because of the society, because of the other insecurities that prevail in our society, women are more vulnerable. So with the increases in numbers, the number of women trafficking has also increased drastically. It is now much more than the earlier times. Women are also vulnerable to abuses and discrimination, particularly in case of distress migration. It is mostly seen that during the decision to migrate, many women lack proper information. In fact, we still know that they depend on their male counterparts to decide whether they are going to migrate or not. So that factor is still there. They lack proper information. Employment options are generally very limited for women. A significant number of migrant women perform the type of work that is not related to their qualification. And it is true for the highly skilled also. When they migrate as wives, they actually try to find some job where their husband is working, you know, in whatever form, because they have to look after the children also, the household also. So generally women are underemployed than their qualification. As compared to men, more migrant women end up performing the 3D jobs. That's how we see. We see in our houses everywhere, you know, that women are working, taking up the jobs that are dirty, dangerous, and difficult. You know, that's what it is called. Women have also limited access to information for investments also. So although they are playing a role in the decision making, when it comes to themselves as independent persons, they lack proper information, and that is a major problem as far as the women migrants are concerned. also, sometimes we see that the gender relation become more rigid in case of migrants, and that's why we see much more honor killings in the diaspora. Because people, men become somehow more insecure when the lady goes out in a foreign atmosphere, especially the kind of impression we have about the foreign societies. So that is also one aspect. So far as the internal migration is concerned, women workers constitute a significant part of the workforce in India. However, work participation rate is very low, and mainly because they are employed in low jobs. So their participation, in the total earning, their participation is very low. More than 90% of the total workforce in the country is engaged in unorganized sector, and of the total employment of women, they comprise only 4% of the organized sector, and 96% of women are employed in the unorganized. So 4% are only in organized sector, 96% are in organized sector. Women workers in unorganized sectors also are vulnerable to various exploitation, including the sexual harassment. This is actually a major problem, that 96% of the women workforce is employed as laborers, is employed as in unorganized sector, which leads to several kinds of problems. Now, women and migration development. We know that women, we just now discussed that they are now migrating as independent bread earners. So they have, their role have become very important, and they are actually also playing a very important in poverty reduction, in other economic benefits the home country or the home, the village, the native village is receiving. They witness new opportunities and make use of this. Maximum number of studies show that migration leads to improvement in women's life. They do face several improvements in their life, and especially when they leave their local places, they manage to break the strict gender boundaries, and come out, they go out, they work. So that migrant women are also major contributors through remittances. These new opportunities provide new spaces in agency to women. Even when women do not migrate and the husbands have migrated, they are independent decision makers in the family. So that way also their role increases, their independence increases. One of the very major stalking factor that came into my a notice while I was studying all these worldwide studies on women migrants, that women tend to send more remittances, more money to the families. Although they are earning less, they send more money to their homes. And also they spend their money when they are independent, spending independently. They spend more money on child's welfare, child's education, and other welfare things in the family. Men actually tend to invest more on the asset creation and things like that. Women spend more on the family welfare, and they send more money to the families back home. So that is a very significant aspect. Now, when we come to the government policies, government has come up with various policies related to women from time to time. And while I was looking at this aspect, I also found that there are regular questions in the parliament about women migrants, but that is mainly women who are the international migrants, And one of the major problems that we are facing today is the fake marriages, and also when they marry and go abroad, so there are no, they are not aware of the rules and regulations, and when they face exploitation or domestic abuse, they cannot actually approach the proper authorities and all this. So government of India is now, aware of this problem, and every stage they are trying to provide insurance, they are trying to provide lawyers, they are trying to provide financial help and all kinds of assistance to the migrant ladies, and also the ones who are working as maid in Gulf. We know that they are facing a lot of exploitation there, but because their families need money back home, they continue there. So there are now counselors in the embassies to look after them. So there is a series of policies that Government of India has introduced to take care. You can see these are all you can find in my publications, so please, if you are referring, please quote me this presentation. So so there are Bima Yojanas for women. There are several kinds of, I have written here, you can see that there are but when it comes to internal migrant women, there are policies. The ILO also talks about it. Indian Constitution also talks about it, that the equal pay and things like that and protection are. But actually, if you see on ground, women are paid less. Women are also more vulnerable. Women are facing several kinds of exploitations. Apart from what they face as a laborer, as a women also they face this problem. And this is a major issue that is still lying unaddressed by the Government of India. So this is the scenario, overall scenario of women migrants in our society, and what India is facing. Also, I would like to say that, when we talk about this women, I'm not actually trying to segregate women from the overall problem. No, they stand there with their male counterparts as far as the problem is concerned. But there are additional problems that women face. And while we talk about women, it is very important that these additional problems are to be addressed while, taking the whole problem into account. And actually, also, I think one of the major problems in case of internal migration in India is the documentation. We just don't know anything about who's going where, what are the numbers, how many women are there, in what condition they are working, how the hours they are working. Nothing is known. And that is a major drawback while talking about women or while formulating policies about them. So in the present, we know that the COVID crisis has expanded to engulf several other areas, and migration is one of them. It has led to distress reverse migration and has become one of the most telling human stories. This reverse migration crisis actually began after the first lockdown ended. Actually, till that time, we see that there was quite, these laborers were quite patient, I would say, and they were also paid. During the first lockdown, we come across that the contractors are giving them food, they are being paid, so they stayed. But actually, it became very big, after the second lockdown ended, and then they realized that no, it is going to continue further. Then the contractors, for obvious reasons, they stopped providing them food and other benefits, and that they became very restless. And it is unfortunate. And let me tell you, I would not say that this is the fault. Actually, I think it's good that the government is responsive. It is very important while dealing with human beings. We really don't know how they are going to react. Actually, they are not objects, they are human beings. They might react differently to what we think or what the government thinks. But once they have reacted in this way, this problem has to be addressed. I really hope that, and all of us really hope that the government is going to address this more systematically. This is very important. Now, when we bring gender dimension into the whole discourse, the idea is not to segregate, as I said, but to highlight the additional problems that the women are facing. So we are still not aware of the security issues that these women are facing while traveling on the highways. You know, all these issues are actually blind at that present. At present, maybe it will come up later on what was happening, but we really don't know actually anything. And it is scary. It is scary. That's what one can think. We hear reports of women delivering child on the roads itself. There must be several other medical issues that we are actually not aware of now. There is no food, no water. There are communication problems because of which these laborers cannot be contacted. There are so many accidents because of the speeding vehicles. Even when these laborers are reaching their villages, there is a fear of spread, and the villagers are not actually welcoming these laborers. They are being, told to stay outside. And in this situation, you just think about a lady. There are 2 or 3 aspects that needs attention, I think. In the first place, there are laborers who have decided to stay back in the big cities or wherever they were working, like Mumbai, Surat, Delhi, and other industrial cities. These laborers should be encouraged to stay back by providing them accommodation, food, etc. The local community centers, schools, and colleges can be converted into. The government has already announced the free ration that can be used to help these help providing food to the laborers who have stayed back. Since small and medium industries are starting now with government initiative, the laborers can be further encouraged to stay back because now they will get work. So there are 3 categories, according to me. It is one, that the ones who have stayed back. Now, the other category, the second category, is the migrants who have already started traveling back. They are on roads. The only way out is to providing help then and there to these migrants. The state governments have to address this problem by sending buses to pick them up and drop them to their destinations. On all the major highways, the vans with food and water should run for at least 1 week to 10 days, because within that time, these migrants will reach to their destination. So it's not forever that we will be afraid of costs. It is just for one more week. And most importantly, ambulances have to be provided on road constantly with women health workers, so that issues like childbirth, miscarriage, and other things can be addressed. Imagine, who knows what these women are facing. They must be facing, walking hundreds of kilometers with these pregnant ladies, might be facing different kind of problems, with no food, no water. Just it is frightening to think about this situation. And the government has to, and it is responding, there is no doubt about it, but it has to be more focused. Provide them with ambulances, with medical care. That's a very important thing that the government should do. Now, the third issue is the long-term planning. This is a very important thing. India has quite a mismanaged migration system, or rather, there is no system at all. In such a situation, itself leads to lot of exploitation of workers, especially women. So we need to develop a migration management system. One of the first steps towards this is to develop an app like Arogya Setu. I think it's very important for us now to have a Shramik, Pravasi Shramik app or something like that, It is like the way Arogya Setu is working. It is there, it can track people anywhere in this country. Once the migrant laborers register in that app with their name, age, gender, skill is also very important. Address at the origin, the state governments will have a complete data of the migrant workers and will be able to track them in this kind of crisis, And this crisis is going to stay for some time now. It is more we document them properly, more we will be able to address their needs, in a better way. Several other features can be introduced in this app for the benefit of the migrant laborer. Another very important step, I've been suggesting this since 2008, that the migrant workers should register with the panchayats along with their phone numbers before they leave their villages. So, and now we know that panchayats are connected through internet. All, the whole, it's optic fiber is being spread to connect all the panchayats now. So there will be a definite data from which village this migrant is moving. This is really going to help in future if any help is needed. In fact, they can inform their panchayats, they can inform through that app, to the government as to where they are and what they are facing in case of any exploitation or overwork also. In all these efforts, women workers as well as have to be categorized by taking into account their requirements. Women should be made part of the policy making. The women who are concerned, maybe the ones who are a bit capable, and have been migrants themselves, should be included in policy making to give a first-hand problem and report what exactly they faced and what exactly the governments can do to protect them. So to conclude, I would like to say that while it is true that overall the number of women migrants have increased and women have become primary migrants instead of dependents, and that focus of migration research has definitely shifted to include women in its ambit, it is also evident that the vulnerability of women migrants to exploitation and abuse has increased. Though women have started playing important economic role in the migration, but need of suitable government policies for favorable work environment and protection is required. Migration is something that human beings have always followed, looking for better opportunities. But the major concern for the government is to stop distress migration that is the cause of exploitation, especially for women. Thank you. Thank you. That was my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey, for a wonderful insight and concerns regarding women migrants. I would like to share some reactions that we've been getting. This is Sheesh Kumar. He says that, Madam, this is very nice and an informative presentation, knowledgeable presentation. There is a lot of reactions by the participants. They are quite informed regarding this issue, and I think that was our aim. That
thank you.
The concern, and it was a very informative presentation. Now I'll be ready to take questions. Ambaji, Dr. Ambaji, there is one question.
Yes.
This question is from Shri Ajit ji. He's our colleague from the Department of History. I'll just read out the question.
Yeah.
He sent me. Or Ajit, can you ask the question by switching on your audio? Ajit ji, आप पूछ सकते हैं या मैं पूछूं? Ravinder? Okay, I think I'll just ask you the question. Ajit ji's question is that, first of all, he thanks you. He says, thank you, madam, very much for this informative talk. He says that you said that about 4% women are in the organized sector and around 96% women in the unorganized sector in India.
Yeah.
And India is a caste-ridden society. So he wants to know whether you have done any study through caste perspective, or is there any data about caste wise also, if you can include that in your future, if not done. study of this sector with caste perspective. That is his
Okay.
peculiar
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's a very, very important question. Yes.
Yes, it is a very important question. Thank you for asking. Yeah, I might include that only if I get some data. You know, that is something. Now that we have a census, caste-based census now, and if the reports really come up, I can see. But I am basically an IR person, you know, international relations person. I'm not a sociologist, but yes, caste is a major factor, and we know that how caste is a to some extent, not now, but till some, you know, in past, it was a deciding factor as to who will migrate. This is something that, because in villages, these Brahmins and all, you know, they are much more, I think they are much more closed towards migrating, you know, than the other castes. So that's a good study. Thank you. Yeah. In fact, even if you can do it, I would be happy to talk on this matter. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Pandey. There's another question, and it comes from Dr. Rajkumar Bhagat ji. He is also a colleague from the Department of Mathematics. सर पूछते हैं कि क्या वर्तमान मजदूरों के प्रवास का संकट विकास के क्षेत्रीय असंतुलन को नहीं दर्शाता? अकुशल मजदूरों को 2 वक्त की रोटी के लिए हजारों किलोमीटर दूर जाना राज्य की विफलता है. So this is his concern question. जी.
Yes, आपने बिल्कुल सही कहा. और ये इनफैक्ट ये जो माइग्रेशन है ना, खासकर जो डिस्ट्रेस माइग्रेशन है, ये दिखाता ही है कि ये असंतुलित जो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट है, यही दिखाता है, यही दर्शाता है. ये बहुत जरूरी था कि सरकार इस चीज को एड्रेस करे. और हम तो स्कॉलर्स हैं, उम्मीद करते हैं कुछ सजेस्ट कर सकते हैं. इनफैक्ट मैंने अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में लिखा भी है, अगर आप बहुत सीरियसली मीडियम और स्मॉल स्केल इंडस्ट्रीज को, जो क्लस्टर्स हैं, इंडस्ट्रियल क्लस्टर्स हैं, उनसे डिसेंट्रलाइज करके जो बैकवर्ड एरियाज हैं वहां पे अगर आप रिलोकेट करने की कोशिश करें, इस क्राइसिस के बाद जब हम एक तरह से पूरी तरह नई शुरुआत कर रहे हैं, उस समय अगर हम इस सिलसिले में कुछ करते हैं, और जैसा लग रहा है कि बहुत सारा फंड दिया गया है, अब देखने की बात है कि ये हो पाता है या नहीं और फ्यूचर में हम क्या कर पाते हैं. लेकिन अगर ऐसा कर दिया जाए, मैंने अपने प्रेजेंटेशन में लिखा भी है, शायद मैं मिस आउट कर गई हूँ उसको पढ़ने में, तो कम से कम डिस्ट्रेस माइग्रेशन तो रोका जा सकता है. थोड़े तो माइग्रेट करेंगे, ये मनुष्य की आदत होती है, लेकिन जो डिस्ट्रेस माइग्रेशन है ये कम से कम हम रोक सकते हैं. और कम से कम जो आस पास ही कहीं माइग्रेट करें. हालांकि मेरा जो अपना मानना है वो ये है कि जब आसपास माइग्रेट करते हैं ना, तो महिला फिर वही उसी जकड़न में रह जाती है, वो तोड़ नहीं पाती है. जब वो दूर जाती है तो वो तोड़ पाती है उस जकड़न को जो वो अपने गांव में महसूस करती है. लेकिन फिर भी ये मैं मानती हूँ कि संतुलित इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट बहुत जरूरी चीज है, और ये मीडियम और स्मॉल स्केल इंडस्ट्री से बहुत आसानी से किया जा सकता है. जो संतुलन है इसको बरकरार किया जा सकता है. जी.
Thank you, Ambaji. And I like to share a comment from one of the Facebook comment. This is by Umesh Chandra Joshi. He says, "Thank you, ma'am. It was really nice, especially the last part." And I think I would also agree with Umesh ji. What can be done? Because we all talk about problems, and your concern about solution. That's what even Umesh Chandra Joshi ji has appreciated. He says, "What can be done?" It was very knowledgeable and wonderful. Thank you, Ambaji.
Thank you.
I think there's another, there is another observation by Archana Kumar. She says that agreed, there is no data about women reverse migration, but it will affect both ways, whether they are returning to their men or the men are returning. So I think this is a very relevant question in case they are worse sufferers, whether they are returning or the men are returning. So that is between the devil and the deep sea situation for women migrants both ways. So that's one of her observation. And I think I'll just take There is one question by one of our faculty also, is Ravinder Ban from Commerce faculty, our colleague. He asks that the reverse migration is really alarming, and how will the small industry will start working without their participation? Yes, this is it's a big major concern. So this is
Yeah.
what Ravinder ji has asked.
या ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल है, और इसीलिए जो मैंने व्हाट कैन बी डन है उसमें एक वो कैटेगरी रखी जो अभी रुके हुए हैं, उन्हें वहां रोकना भी बहुत जरूरी है। आप उनको जो भी फैसिलिटी प्रोवाइड करना हो करिए, लेकिन वहां उनका रुकना इस समय बहुत जरूरी है, क्योंकि उनके बिना ये इंडस्ट्री शुरू नहीं हो सकती है। लेकिन मैं एक फिर ये बात मानती हूँ कि यही एक मौका है to relocate these industries from some clusters to the interiors of our country, so that बहुत ज्यादा माइग्रेट ना दूर ना जाके छोटे छोटे काम के लिए जो ये लोग जाते हैं, कम से कम आसपास के विद इन द स्टेट also if they can find work. And I think ये एक मौका है जहाँ पे हम थोड़ा सा इस मामले में सोच सकते हैं। नए इंडस्ट्रीज भी इनवाइट करिए, लेकिन जो पुराने हैं और जो लगभग बंद हो चुके हैं, उनको अगर रिलोकेट किया जा सके तो ये बहुत अच्छा होगा।
Thank you, Amba ji. Now there is a question to Purva ji. Purva Gulati ji, can you switch on your audio?
Yes.
Purva ji?
Yeah.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Amba ji, this is Purva ji. Please introduce yourself and ask your question.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm Purva Gulati. I'm English faculty in Delhi Technological University. I am recently working on diaspora literature. So in diaspora, we study a lot of women authors like Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, the one I'm working on, Shauna Singh Baldwin, Arundhati Roy, Kiran Desai. All these writers have given a lot about, women writers and women workers who have migrated in the world of globalization to different parts, and we are talking about transnational space. In that case, the thing that becomes problematic is identity. So how can you address the notion of identity, be it the migration from rural space to urban space, or be it the migration from India to Canada or other countries? How can a woman, or for that matter, any being, address the question of identity? Because if, like Shauna Singh Baldwin talks a lot about Sikh women who are actually the natives of India or Punjab, and they have been migrated to Canada, and how they are being compressed because of the composite identity which they have to face. So I just need you that you address this thing about, and particularly for women, the question of identity becomes very important. So how can you talk about the transnational space or this question of identity? I'm sorry if I've, taken a lot of time. But
no, not at all. Not at all. If we have time, we can. It's a very good question. And actually, while we are talking about migrants and diaspora, especially, identity comes up as a major issue with them, and it is something that, it has been discussed by various scholars and authors. First is that the writers, the women writers in the diasporas, are actually the first ones who brought the women's voice in the forefront, So that is one aspect. Otherwise, what women were thinking and what role they are playing in this identity formation was actually not known. So at least now we are discussing women's perspective in the identity formation. Now, coming to identity, let me tell you that it is not something static. It is constantly in the formation and reformation, and especially the diaspora identities. If you see the generation that went to US and the third generation now, the Indian identity or the Indian content in that identity is completely different. It is constantly in the reformation. The question is, what role women are playing in this identity formation? This is the question, because we cannot actually discuss, stop or guide the identity. It is going to take shape. And let me tell you, these communities that now are actually that have played very important role in providing the boundary within which the identities can be formed are also being broken by the new generations. So actually it is a constant process, and nothing, identity is a very psychological, social thing, and which the humans will form the way they want to, basically. But the question, but the most, the irony is that the women actually are also called the carriers of the Indian tradition, and then it is there,
Right.
the whole question becomes a very, debatable. That they themselves are playing this carriers, where they want this, that, their daughter should be like this, that, they are the ones who frame. And yet they are the ones who are the main sufferers of this whole boundary lined identity, But I think it's a constant process. In diaspora, identities are undergoing reformation at every stage, and that's what we are going to see in future also.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Purva. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, Ambaji. Now there's there's another question by, we have a couple of 2-3 questions, so we'll be a bit quick. Archana ji, you wanted to ask a question. You could please on your audio. Is Archana ji there? Okay. Okay. I'll just, okay. Archana ji, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you be? Yes. Please go ahead with your question. Thank you.
Ambaji, it was a very comprehensive, a very informative talk. And in fact, the first part of, in your first part of presentation, you were talking about, how this diaspora migration has empowered women, right? And in the later about the, the reverse migration due to this COVID pandemic. So my just curiosity, and see about these the newspaper reports, etc. Everywhere we are hearing so much about the women migrants and the migrants on the road. But what about those who have been working abroad, in Gulf countries, in software professionals? So they are also jobs. They are losing their jobs. So how it is going to impact this reverse migration from abroad? How is it going to affect, the empowerment that they acquired, and gender relations and gender roles? Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Archana Kumar. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I'm happy that you joined. Actually, it's a very good question, and all of us are waiting to see how things turn up. There are actually, that's what homogenizing women as a category is always very problematic. So it's better to see them as in sections, highly skilled ones. What they are going to do? They might find job after this crisis takes work really starts, especially the medical and the health workers. I am very sure there will be much demand of the medical doctors and nurses and other health workers throughout the world. And India has a good numbers. So who would like to migrate? So they might find easier jobs. But as IT professionals also can be, can go easy on after the pandemic. But what about others? That's a big issue, and it is yet to be seen. And yes, we are looking at this whole idea of, reinventing Indian economy after the pandemic, with lot of small and medium scale industries and more industries coming in from China. We hear that around 500 companies are knocking our doors, So we might have more jobs. Only the future, we have to see how much jobs India can create, or how much jobs the world can create to consume these skilled and highly skilled workers. And as far as the Gulf return migrants are concerned, it is again the medium and short-term industries where they can be consumed. And I think the pandemic is this aspect of economy also needs equal attention, and hopefully the government is looking at this. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Archana. Thank you, Ambaji. Now I request, there's a question from faculty. This is Dr. Anamika Prasad. She's a colleague from the Department of Political Science. Dr. Anamika, can you just ask your question? You can switch on your audio. Are you there, Anamika ji? Dr. Anamika Prasad? Yes, Anamika, please go ahead with your question. We can't hear you. Switch on your audio, Anamika ji. Hello.
She is unmuted. Her mic is on.
Okay. Yes, yes, please, Anamika ji. Please go ahead with your question. Dr. Anamika Prasad, Department of Political Science, ARSD College. She's a colleague from Political Science Department.
Oh.
Yes, Anamika, please go ahead with your question. And then I think I'll take one more question after this. Ravinder, we can't hear Anamika ji.
Technically is all fine from here. Maybe she is having problem at her own end.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anamika, can you hear me? Okay. Okay. By the time we get in, Anamika ji, I think I'll ask a question. This is a question from Facebook, I guess. Yeah. It's Vinay Narang ji. He's asking that how to make yourself so strong to handle this situation. So,
you know, I was thinking the other day, I was suggesting to someone that please, you can do it, and others also, all these gurus, you know, the Sri Sri and with their own art of living, please go and address these migrants. Please, this is a very tough times for them. You know, perhaps, you know, these kind of spiritual, any religion, any spirituality, you know, can help them to really understand the situations that are sometimes not under your control fully. But yet you have to be patient to see the, you have to have the patience to wait and watch and do the best out of what you can, you know. So I really think that the migrants in quarantine centers, in the ones who have stayed back, or you and me, everyone, needs to have
rightly said.
Yes,
Yeah.
Because at these points, you know, all we need is strength, mental, psychological, spiritual, all strength, you know, that can be provided by, if there is any, I don't know, Almighty or whatever. I mean, beyond any religious.
Yeah. Thank you, Ambaji. That's a very positive approach, and I think we all will follow it. There's one question. There is. Can we have Anamika ji? I think I'll take one last question. Or is Anamika there? There's one question.
I think Professor Tanuja Singh is waiting to ask some question, and the question you asked with my name, actually, it was her question. She might be something.
Okay, Tanuja. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, you are.
Okay, Tanuja ji. Yeah, please go ahead with your question. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
You're welcome.
Actually, my question was like the current scenario when the situation is really alarming. All the migrants are going back to their own place. What should be the program or a plan of action before the government just for their survival? It's true that there should be some right protection of their rights, but right now, what should be our what is the plan of the government?
Thanks, Tanuja. Thanks for asking this, Professor Tanuja Singh, a great friend. Actually, some of the things I discussed in my presentation also, but one measure that the government has taken is to providing free ration, irrespective of ration card. Cards is a good gesture, you know. So everyone will be provided with ration without whether or not they have ration card. For next 3 months, the food consumption by everyone in the family should be taken care of by the government. This is a very, very basic thing. The other is, of course, you know, start the work. I think that is also necessary because there is a lot of restlessness. among the people, you know. So start of work, food, and I don't know, I mean, there could be several other medical facilities, you know, the ones who have reached. I think ambulances have to go to these on highways or to the villages to take care, to see what these people who are returning back, you know, they might have not eaten for days altogether. So even if they get food, you know, their health might react adversely. So, you know, all these medical food, these things have to be addressed by the government, you know, at least next 2-3 months, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Ambaji. That was very good reply, and I think Tanuja ji's answer. I hope Tanuja ji, Professor Tanuja, you're satisfied with the answer. Thank you, Tanuja ji. Now I think since we are running short of time, there are a lot of questions, and I would just share this with you, Professor Dr. Amba, that lot of reactions, a lot of thanks, and you have about your lecture. It was very informative.
Thank you.
And I must just tell you this, that it's not only our teaching faculty, but we have attendees from our non-teaching faculty also, from the from the account section, from the office. So they are also conveying their thanks, and they are very happy to listen to you. And now I think this last question is by Shish Kumar from Kalandi College. I think it's more than a question, it's a very good observation and advice, I guess. But I think, Ambaji, you should just take it as per your expertise. Madam, my question is, if women and other facilities are fully provided in their own states, then it will not be right for women. There will be a reduction in misbehavior with them in other states. He means to say, probably, if I get it right, let me just check. I think I missed his. He means to say that if women and other facilities are fully provided to them in their own states, then it will not be right for women. There will be a reduction in misbehavior with them in other states. So probably he wants, I mean, what I understand, Shish Kumarji, is that you want to say that they should be self-sufficient in the states where they are, rather than, you know, going to other states for provision. Probably this is what I understand.
Okay.
Yes, Ambaji.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay, you can say that. You know, these are two issues. Completely, you know, there should be no misbehavior with the lady. You know, they should be protected. But as far as going to other states or anywhere in the world is concerned, it's her own right. If she wants, she can move, you know. But the question is, how protective is the environment overall? You know, protective means how safe, not protective. How safe is the environment, you know, which is receiving her. So even if say Gujarat is quite safe for women, they say, because of that cultural context, you know, or some of the states in South, yet women decide to migrate, you know. And we know that from Tamil Nadu, from Kerala is a good society that way, but a lot of women migrate from Kerala. You know, the numbers are huge from Kerala. So that's how it is. You know.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ambaji, for that refined and clear observation. Can I mean, I can just give a chance to Anamika if her audio is up again. Dr. Anamika, is your audio available?
Ravinder, I just had a talk with Anamika ma'am, and she's saying that her answer is already covered within the question.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, now thank you, Ambaji. Now I'll officially ask my colleague, Dr. Maushmi, to please deliver the vote of thanks. And before she delivers the vote of thanks, एक शेर मेरी आदतन मैं मजबूर हूँ और एक शेर मैं अर्ज करूँगी कि ये उन मजदूरों और उन मजदूरों के पैरों के छाले को लेकर है और महिलाओं को लेकर है कि आई एम नॉट रिमेम्बरिंग हूज द पोएट बट ये शेर ऐसे है कि मुझको थकने नहीं देता ये जरूरत का पहाड़, मुझको थकने नहीं देता ये जरूरत का पहाड़, मेरे बच्चे मुझे बूढ़ा नहीं होने देते, मेरे बच्चे मुझे बूढ़ा नहीं होने देते. So I request Dr. Maushmi Ray from the Department of English and a member of our Women Development Cell to please deliver your vote of thanks. Okay, Dr. Maushmi.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Maushmi. Dr. Maushmi, you're audible. Please go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mobin, for handing over the mic to me. It gives me great pleasure, Dr. Pandey, to have the privilege of listening to you and to deliver the vote of thanks. In the beginning of your presentation, you have actually put the entire unfolding situation in front of us and situated us also as participants in this extremely new kind of a crisis that we are facing. And as we are facing this crisis, on one hand, we empathize with the situation of the migrant workers, especially the women. But on the other hand, it also raises a lot of the specters of partition. It makes us re-articulate the questions of marginality. And you have very interestingly not only provided an insightful acknowledgement of the situation, but you have also given us this nuggets of interventions that we in our personal capacities, by questioning, by participating, and by our expectations of what the government can do, will be able to sort of in some way sort of contribute to the sort of resolution of this unfolding crisis. So once again, thank you, Dr. Pandey, for bringing up these insightful points in your lecture. Also, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our IQAC for organizing this kind of a very, very pertinent set of programs that we are having. And for this, our main thanks, of course, goes to our principal, sir, who is always there as an encouraging presence. Also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our team members at the what we call the team webinar headed by Dr. Vinita Tuli. And I'll take this moment to appreciate them, and I will mention them. I'll take a little bit of time, mention them by name. Anju Bajaj ma'am, Ravinder ji, Baljit, Anupriya, Manavendra, Amit, you guys are doing a stellar job. Thank you from all of us. And last but not the least, the WDC that we have, Mobin, Dr. Mobin Zaira, thank you so much for taking the initiative and bringing the question of migration with reference to gender. And it was a wonderful takeaway, ma'am, Dr. Pandey, that we again realize that women do the dirty, dangerous, and most difficult job. Thank you for that. And also, I would like to thank the participants for your interaction, for the wonderful questions that you have raised. And also, you know, we have had questions right from research to economics to what we can do in our personal capacities. So I think it was a very, very informative session. Thank you all over once again. Thank you so much.
Thank
Mobin,
you. It was really a pleasure to be with such a great audience and such lively participants. I'm really grateful for this interaction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ambaji. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you, Maushmi, for that wonderful. Thank you. Yes, Ravinder.